Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Anna, aka Brookwillow, and today I just wanted to sit down and chat all about knitting. For the past month, the only thing I've been wanting to do is knit. My knitting mojo is very strong right now, and I think my mojo to do anything else is very much lacking. I have not wanted to spin yarn or sew or weave or film cinematic scenes. I literally just want to sit down and knit. Because of that, I have cast on so many projects. I think I have the most amount of active whips going right now than I ever have had in my life, probably. And I think it's good for me to just sit and talk about each garment so I can catch you all up on what I'm making as well. But then it also makes me feel like I'm holding myself accountable a little bit to maybe start finishing up some projects that I started a few months ago. Before we get into everything, I feel like I should talk about what I'm wearing right now. This is the Ranunculus by Midori Hirose. I'm not going to go into the details in the construction of this sweater because this is probably by far the most popular sweater ever knit. But I will say that I knit my version using one strand of mohair, and I really like the kind of ethereal look that it gives. I also think that I want to knit this one again in a more woolly wool and make a thick winter version of it. This one's really nice for the shoulder season. So today it's, I think, going to get up to like 68, which would be a little too much for a really thick sweater, but this is kind of the perfect weight for it. But I think it would be cool to knit another version, especially with something that isn't like a hairy yarn, so you can see the lace motif a bit better. I do like how subtle my version of it is, but it would be nice to make another version of it someday. But that is not something I'm getting to anytime soon, and you will know after you see all of the whips that I'm currently working on. Now that we got that out of the way, I do have one finished object to show you.
Trusting your instincts, realize that knowing looks different to each. When living authentic, do more exploring, deeper than knowing just what is essential for life that is thriving. Go deep, mute out the chatter, feel it, burn off the fire, let go until there's peace to your core. Live a life you adore.
You may have already guessed, but yes, I ended up test knitting the Haze Sailor top by Andrea Mowry. This is a very cool construction of a sweater. First of all, it's intended to be fully reversible, so you can wear it either frontwards or with the buttons in the back. I so far have worn it both ways. I've been getting a lot of wear out of this because it fits so good. This pattern is a mosaic knit pattern that is knit flat starting at the bottom and working your way all the way to the top. And then you do these quick little sleeves here and then knit up the button band. One thing that really drew me to this pattern is this stitch pattern, as you can see up close here. it reminded me of weaving in a way, like weaving overshot. I had been doing a lot of weaving this summer, and it just reminded me of some of the patterns, and I thought it was cool to try that in a knitting format. And I just really like how the lines in between the little rectangles are slightly distorted, and that is because of the mosaic. I ended up knitting a size 6 because I personally have found that I really prefer my sweaters to have about 10 inches of positive ease. I generally like all of my clothes to have positive ease. The only time I really want something really tight or negative ease is if I'm wearing it underneath as like a layering piece. So the fact that this would always likely be on top, I wanted it to be nice and loose. I used the recommended yarn, which is Knitting for Olive's Cotton Merino. It's not my first time I worked with this yarn. I've made a couple garments out of this yarn, so I knew that I would really like it, and it would be a nice piece to wear both in the summertime but also in the winter. I find that this particular yarn is cool when you need it to be and then warm when you need it to be, and I really like the versatility of that. The colors that I chose for this is Dusty Banana, which is the lighter color you see, and then Ochre Brown, which is the darker color. One thing you may notice or may not notice, but I did make a little modification for the sweater, and normally the ribbing is called for using the main color, so the Dusty Banana, which you see, but I wanted to create a higher contrast like ribbing and button band, so I decided to use the contrast color, which is the Ochre Brown, for the ribbing and the button band instead. And I did give exact yardages or maybe grams on my Ravelry page for how much I needed for both colors. If you're curious about doing the same thing, you could check out that Ravelry page, and all of the information is there. The buttons I used are these, I can't tell if they're metal or wood or plastic, to be honest with you. I used embroidery thread to sew on these buttons, and at the time when I sewed these on, I grabbed this orange color really quick because I thought it was the closest color that I had to this. I went up to some land that Mitch's family has for the weekend and sewed these on up there. And once I sewed them on, I realized I did not like the orange with the dark buttons. I wish I went with like a darker embroidery thread. So if I hate it enough or get sick of it enough, I may re-sew the buttons on with a darker thread. I just don't want to do that because it's a lot of work and I don't like doing double work. But yeah, if I were to go back and do it again, I would pick a color that was closer to the button and not the fabric. I also forgot to mention that there are two options for the length. You can do a cropped length or a full length, and I opted to do the cropped length here. In the past, some of Andrea's patterns have come out to be a little too cropped for me, but this one actually ended up being a perfect length. I don't know if part of that is because it has a bit more positive ease, so there's more fabric to flow, which might increase the length a little bit. But overall, I just think the cut and the fit and the length of it all is exactly what I like to wear. Now it's time to chat about all of my works in progress. And I think the first one that I'm going to talk about is one of many submissions that I have for the Cal that I'm hosting, which is the Book Club Cal. In summary, the Cal is all about knitting from any hard copy book, magazine, publication, anything along those lines. And if you want more information about that, I would check out the last video that I made. It's only 3 minutes long and it gives you all of the information you need to know for that cal. A couple months ago, Unit Toronto reached out to me and told me that Claudia Quintanilla is releasing a new book called Memory Lane, which you may have heard a lot about already. It seems like a lot of people have been talking about this book coming out, and a lot of the patterns are using different embellishments and lace and very fine lace and fingering weight yarn to make a lot of beautiful, delicate pieces. And they asked me if I was interested in sampling a pattern from the book, and I was, because there was one particular sweater that they showed on the Instagram that I just could not stop thinking about. And that pattern is the Aureliano. This is an all-over colorwork sweater using just mohair, not paired with anything else. So 4 different colors of mohair. And I was really craving an all-over color knit sweater. Not something that just has a yoke, but all the way down to the hem as well as the arms. They generously sent me the yarn to make this sweater, and this is how far I have gotten on it. I actually knit this up really fast. It may not look like much right now, and that's because I've been getting distracted with so many different patterns, but I knit all of this within a week. I feel like most of the sweaters I knit are bottom up flat, so it's very refreshing to be knitting in the round top down. And now that I'm looking at the sweater, I really want to pick up and start knitting it again, because I remember saying this would be a really nice sweater to have for Halloween time, because they kind of give me Halloween vibe colors in here with the oranges and the gray and the black inside of it. At this point, I don't know if I'll be able to finish by Halloween, because that's only like a few weeks away, but maybe if I just started focusing on this, I could have it done by then. If not, it's not like a really obvious Halloween sweater by any means, and definitely something that I could wear throughout the cold season. This is one sweater that may end up having less negative ease than I'm usually used to. I'm knitting this in a size 5, and it just, off the bat, it seems like it's knitting up a little bit smaller than I normally would wear a garment, but it would be kind of cool to switch it up a little bit and have a sweater that's a little bit more tight fitting. I think especially since this is knit at a very fine gauge. I am holding the yarn held double, but it's lace weight yarn, so even then it's still, I think, comes out to be like a lace weight, not even quite a fingering weight. And so, yeah, maybe at a finer gauge, I would really enjoy wearing something a little bit more tight fitting. The yarn that I'm using to make this sweater is Ito Sensai. It's my first time working with this yarn, and I was really excited to work with it because who doesn't love trying out new yarn? And the colors are just exactly the colors that are in the sample, because they just sent me one of the kits. And the blue yarn, which is like the main one, is called Billiard. And then there's a dark charcoal called Charcoal. And then we have Smoke Gray and Carrot. I think they're very appropriately named yarns. But yeah, I'm enjoying this. It reminds me a lot of Knitting for Olive's silk mohair. And if you're ever looking for an alternative to that, I think this is a really good one. It's also nice because they come already caked up and you don't have to wind it up, which is really nice, I think, especially with a mohair yarn, because we all know how that can get quite a bit more tangled, especially if you're swift and your winder is just kind of falling apart like mine is from overuse for sure. But yeah, just one of the perks of working with this yarn here. So thank you, Unit, for sending me the yarn as well as this gorgeous book. This next whip, I think I talked about it quite a bit these last few episodes or videos that I've been making, so I won't go into too much detail, but it is the Tesselated Cardigan by Andrea Mowry. This one, as you can see, is knitted flat bottom up, and I think it'll be similar like the Haze Sailor. You knit it all the way up and then the sleeves and then pick up and do the button band around. I'm mostly excited about the yarn that I'm using for this because it's very autumnal color, so it's just, I'm feeling it very much this season. I am using hand spun yarn for the color changing yarn. This is yarn that I spun up using just a supported spindle, which felt like a big feat. It was a lot of fiber to spin up, and I got 3 big skeins out of it. The way that I spun this up is 3-ply, and I did a combo spin using 3 different colored braids from Lavender Lune Yarn Co. And it just made this beautiful kind of really red heavy and ochre colored yarn with hints of blue, which I think is really nice, adding a bit of contrast to all of the ochre color inside of it. And then the solid color I'm using is, this isn't a beautiful ball right here, but this is Sonder Yarn Co. It's my first time knitting with Sonder yarn, and I have been loving their yarn so much. This is their Sunday Morning Luxe Sport in the colorway Full English. And then I am knitting, or I'm using their Silk Mohair, which I think is really, this color especially is so pretty. And it's the colorway Horsetail. I feel like I'm knitting a lot of mohair right now, and I don't generally knit with a lot of mohair. This is just kind of out of the norm for me, but I've been having fun with it. So yeah, these 3 comboed together is making this beautiful color changing effect. It's kind of maybe hard to tell from far away, but up close, it's definitely very potato chippy because I keep wanting to see how the color changes as it progresses. So I just keep saying one more row, just so I can see what it looks like as it changes color. So I'm having a lot of fun, and just like the last sweater, as I'm looking at this, I'm like, dang, I really need to get going on this because I would absolutely love wearing this fall. I don't know though. I remember how long it took me to knit the pullover last year, and I feel like I'm starting to slip away because, again, I'm just getting distracted. This pattern is also a mosaic knit colorwork pattern, and this is my submission for Casey from Young Folk Knits Mosaic Mayhem Cal. I have been thinking about making this particular sweater for a very long time, and once she announced that she was going to be hosting that Cal, I thought it was a great time to finally cast it on. At the very least, I would love to get it done by the end of her Cal, which is, I think, the end of December. The next project that I'm working on is another submission for the Brook Club Cal, and that is these pair of socks right here. These are the Ananas Socks by Bailey Jacobs from 52 Weeks of Socks Volume 2. This is a huge book of socks, as the title suggests, and I've been slowly making my way through. These might be like my 4th pair of socks that I've knit from here, and this is a pattern that I have had my eye on ever since I got this book, because I really like the look of the 6x2 ribbing on the foot, and I also really like the color combo that the designer used. Now, speaking of color combos, I don't know if I love the way that mine's turning out. I do think that the solid color and the color changing yarn go well together, but I don't know if the pattern is appropriate to combine a colorful yarn with a solid yarn. I think it would have been maybe more effective if I just did two solid colors, but overall, I don't think it's bad. I don't dislike it at all. I think I just could have maybe made some better yarn choices for it. But as you can see, it's a top-down sock pattern using a heel flap and gusset, and then there's this little color work section here that kind of fades from the top color into the bottom color. And I am knitting these 2 at a time. That's why I'm holding both of these sock blockers up like this. I prefer knitting 2 at a time because I definitely get second sock syndrome like every single time, and this is my way of combating that. I'm in the home stretch of the knitting. I just need to knit the rest of the foot, which is a very easy to memorize pattern, and then obviously decrease at the toe and bind off, and then I have a new pair of socks. These have been pretty slow going though, because this is my project that I kind of just leave in my car. So if I get to work a little early, I'll get like 1 row in. Or Mitch and I walked down to a brewery nearby and I was able to get a couple rows in then. But yeah, it's just really little rows here and there, which is why it's moving relatively slow. But again, it's nice to just have a pattern on the go that I don't have to sit and think about or look up the pattern on my phone or anything. I just can pick it up wherever and know exactly what I need to do. And they fit in my purse because they're small. So yeah. I'm excited for these to be done. And again, like the color combos don't bother me too much because really all that's going to be seen when I'm wearing it with shoes is this much. And then it's just like a fun surprise in the shoe, I guess. The top brick color I got at a yarn festival in Minnesota this spring. And it's from Sunshine Queen Fibers is the dyer. I ended up picking up 3 skeins of yarn from this dyer because she had gorgeous colors and I just wanted more sock yarn in stash. And this is her Snow White fingering base, which is 100% superwash extra fine merino, and the colorway is mahogany. And I lost the label to this yarn right here. I've had it in my stash for a few years now. I do know that I bought it from Pasley Yarn, and I think she did a Greek mythology kind of year-long pre-order. I don't know what to call it, but this was one of the months. I can't remember which person was her muse for this month, but I really like the way that these colors turned out. They just kind of remind me of a garden, and then paired with the mahogany, I think it just gives it more of a fall vibe probably. My next project that I'm working on is the Traveler Shawl by Andrea Mowry. I'm having so much fun with this. I love this shawl already, and it's not even close to being done. This shawl has been on a big journey. It wasn't supposed to be a shawl. I started spinning up this fiber last fall with the intention of making the Traveler hoodie. This fiber is Emily C. Gilles. It's her Lustre Norwegian yarn in the colorway Mineral. My intention was to make the Traveler hoodie, but after I spun up all the yarn, I didn't even have enough to make the Traveler pullover, which is basically the same thing minus the hood. So I decided to make this shawl, and I'm going to have to modify it a little bit because I also supposedly don't have enough to make the shawl. I really messed up in estimating the yardages for this one, but it's fine. We adapt. And the bright side of this is This yarn is extremely toothy, which I know it would be very itchy against my skin. So have it being a shawl instead of a sweater, I'm not going to be wearing it next to skin. I would have something underneath to kind of protect myself against the itchiness, but I'll still get all of the warm benefits of wearing this yarn. So as you can see here, there's quite an obvious ombre through the color work, and that was intentional. I wanted to try a different way of spinning up the yarn. Normally I do like a full barber pull where you just split the yarn and spin from opposite ends, so it just looks a lot more colorful, I guess. I don't really know how to describe it, but with this particular yarn, I knew that I was gonna do a 3-ply, so what I did was I split the braid in 3 and I spun 2 singles of the yarn going from one color direction and 1 single going the opposite direction. And that way it creates this ombre effect, but I still liked the look of one of the colors going the different direction to kind of tone it down a little bit so it's not just too obvious of a gradient, if that makes sense. Just like the Tesselated cardigan and seeing how the colors change throughout, this one is satisfying that same excitement for me. I just love doing one more row, because it's just really fun seeing the colors change throughout the shawl. So we'll see how far I can get with the amount of yarn that I have. It's interesting because looking at all of the skeins of yarn that I have for this, it seems like I would have enough for the large size, but we'll pivot if needed if I run out. One thing I wanted to mention too, I know I knit a lot of Andrea Mowry patterns, and one thing is because I just like her aesthetic. I think we have very similar pattern aesthetics, but the other thing I was thinking about, it's because she's a spinner as well, and I think she designs a lot of her patterns to incorporate her hand spun, so a lot of the patterns just work really well with the type of yarn that I'm spinning up, and I just think, yeah, that's probably one of the reasons why I just choose to knit a lot of her patterns. The next project that I'm working on is one that I cast on October 1st, which was the official first day of the Book Club knit along. And it is from this book called Saltwater Mittens. I discovered this book by watching Fruity Knitting's episode that featured the 2 designers of this book, which are Christine LeGrow and Shirley A. Scott. And I think they've made 2, maybe 3 books in this series. And yeah, I was just really called to it. They're based out of Newfoundland in Canada, and these mittens go way back, so there's a big history behind this style of mitten, and the fact that it's color work, it makes the mitten twice as thick, sometimes 3 times as thick, which traps a lot more heat in it, keeping people's hands very warm. And I imagine Newfoundland is very cold in the winter, just like it is here in Wisconsin too. We get very, very cold winters. And I thought these would make excellent gifts for the holiday season. So that's what I cast on with that intention. This year, I decided that it's Mitch's parents' turn to receive knit items from me. And I'm starting with Mitch's dad. He is a big hunter. They have a bunch of land in Wisconsin. I think they hunt on that land a lot. And so the moment I saw the trigger finger style mitten, I thought, wow, that would be a perfect mitten for him, especially with just how cold it gets. So here is one of the pairs that I have knit up so far. So yeah, it's similar to a classic mitten, but as you can see, the pointer finger is free, I think, to be able to hunt with. Even if he doesn't, like, hunt with these. They still would be nice just for a little bit more dexterity, I guess. And I'm thinking about knitting myself a pair like this so I can like do things with my finger but still keep my fingers warm together on this section. I don't know. The specific pattern that I'm using is the Blowin' Gail pattern. And they're all very similar in the book, but they switch up this pattern here. And then some of them would be a full glove. Some of them would be just a mitten. And yeah, so for his dad, I'm doing the trigger style. And I did make a modification. In the book, it's just knit up using 2 colors. But to me, just doing 2 colors actually felt more busy. Like the pattern got lost a little bit. So I wanted to incorporate a 3rd color as well. So I used this cream here, and yeah, it made the mitten even more thick because you're carrying a 3rd yarn throughout instead of just the 2. And I just think it creates a much more striking pattern to it. I'm using all stash scrap yarn, which is the beauty of these mittens. It doesn't take up a lot of yardage, especially because they're color work. You use even less of each color, obviously. And yeah, I'm really liking this so far. So I knit this one up in probably less than a week. Now I just have to encourage myself to cast on the 2nd pair. And then once his are done, I'm going to make Mitch's mom a pair as well. But I think I'm just going to do a classic mitten for her with a nice pattern on the front here. So yeah, I think these are turning out great, and I think they're going to make awesome gifts. The last work in project I'm going to show you today is one that I just cast on last night. So I actually finished that mitten yesterday, and my reward for finishing it was casting on a whole new project. But this is yet another submission for the Book Club Cal. I'm just loving all the books right now. And the pattern that I'm knitting this is from the Shin Trader by Gudrun Johnston. This is an awesome book. I've seen so many really great garments that people have knit come out of this book, and they have a lot of good accessories as well. I have knit the beret from this book, and I also have knit the bandana pattern from this book. And I actually have the bandana right here in front of me. When I first knit this one up, I tried using it as like a headscarf, but the shape of my head doesn't really fit scarves very well. I think the back of my head is pretty flat, so like nothing, it doesn't hold anything up. And then I started wearing this kind of wrapped around like this as like a bandana style, and I wear this at least once a week. I love the way this looks. Sometimes a necklace is a little bit too delicate and you just need something a little bit more substantial, and I feel like this shape has been especially really nice to wear. So I decided I wanted to knit another version of this in a darker, more autumnal color. And that is what I started last night. Here. The other reason why I like knitting it with this color is I feel like you can see the lace in it a lot better. The other version I made was using colorful changing yarn, and so the lace work got a little lost, but this one I think really shows up, especially when I wear it against my pale skin. I think it'll make a really nice contrast. But again, it'll be nice to have a little pop of burgundy accessory that I can add to pretty much anything. And yeah, I'm really liking how this is knitting up. So yeah, I think that's like 6 active whips that I'm working on. I have a few others that I just have hibernating right now because it's just not the right time of year to be working on them. But I'm getting a lot of joy out of all of these. I know I usually try to have one sweater one shawl and like one small accessory. So I have double the amount of projects, but again, I'm really enjoying it, especially because I have been just so focused on knitting. It's probably just the cooler weather that we're starting to get, and I've been kind of starting to like get cozy at night inside and not be out as much. It's a whole vibe. But I want to cast on another sweater as well. So one of my favorite local yarn shops is the Yarnery. They were based on Cathedral Hill in St. Paul, and they just moved to a different location in St. Paul, which looks like it's much larger for them, and it looks like a really beautiful space. So my friend Tara is getting into town in a few days, and we are planning at some point to go check out the new location. And I think what a better time to buy the yarn for the next sweater that I want to work on, which is the cover sweater on Marie Wallen's book, Erin. I have dreamt of knitting up a Marie Wallen sweater for many years now. I just love the whole style of the color work, like all over color work. I think she is just a beautiful designer. So many patterns I want to make. And when she came out with this book, Erin, I jumped to purchase it because I thought, yeah, it would knit up a lot quicker than maybe a fingering weight version of one of her patterns, which I would also like to knit in the future as well. So the sweater on the book is the Seton sweater. It's the reason I bought the book. There are a ton of other beautiful patterns in this book that I absolutely want to make as well, but I figured I should start with the one that really called me to the book in the first place. So this is my plan, is to buy yarn to make this sweater and knit it up. I think it'd be a great sweater to have this winter. I was just watching Lily from Curatorial Knits' latest podcast, and she is knitting this sweater, and oh my gosh, it is an absolute masterpiece. I really enjoy all of the thought she puts into yarn choices for her garments. It makes sense because I think she's an art curator, hence the name. And so I'm not surprised that she does a beautiful job of pairing yarn with patterns. But she even modified the different pattern repeats. It's like not this exact one. She put in different motifs, and the color choices are gorgeous. So that's been a huge inspiration for me as well. So yeah, I just wanted to shout out that I think she's doing a really beautiful job with her version, and I'm really excited to make my own version. I really have no idea of what colors I want to do, but I do think it would be kind of nice to do something similar to what Marie Wallen used for the sample here. So that is a project that I have maybe in my near future. So yes, a lot of knitting that I'm working on. Like I mentioned, I haven't really been doing anything else. I have been traveling a bit these last few weekends, and sometimes when I travel back-to-back weekends, I get really flustered and overwhelmed. So I think knitting has been just a form of comfort for me. And yeah, but I think after this, I'm gonna drive up to Michael's to get some supplies to do my first cross stitch pattern. There's this one particular cross stitch pattern designer on Etsy that I have been loving so much. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I'll link it below. And I think I'm gonna buy one of their patterns and try my hand at cross stitch. I've never done cross stitch before. I've done embroidery a little bit, but yeah, I just want like a nice little project to sit on the couch that is different than knitting, that I can just sit and watch Gilmore Girls to, and yeah, just be cozy and have fun. Anyways, I'm getting to the point where I'm just starting to ramble a little bit, so I think we should wrap it up, but I'm really glad I had a chance to sit down and just show you my whip parade because I wanted to share it with you. Let me know in the comments below if you are participating in the Brook Club Cal and what you'll be knitting. I do have a Discord chat for the Cal, so I'll link that in the description as well if you'd like to join. Come on in. It's a pretty easy going group. We're just kind of posting our project planning and whips at this point. I hope you are having a wonderful autumn and you are also getting all the knitting time in. It's really like the best time of year for us knitters. I also wanted to say welcome to anybody that may be new around here. If you haven't subscribed yet, consider doing so below, and that way you won't miss out on any future content. And if you like what you see here, please give it a thumbs up. That really helps my channel out a lot. But yeah, in the meantime, I hope you have a great rest of your weekend and we will chat next time. Bye.